Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Madhava Punjabi Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Jaya जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य स्तोत्र सदस्य श्रीमद् अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य स्तोत्र सदस्य श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती स्वामी महाराज की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा श्री वासुदेव गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। ब्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर की नवद्वीप धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। द्वारका धाम की जय। जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी महारानी की जय। समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। गौर भक्त प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna devotees, welcome for ISKCON Seshadripuram Srivasangam chapter morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today I have been instructed to discuss the second canto, sixth chapter, the second half of the sixth chapter. That means verse number 23 to 46, I think, around 23 odd verses. So we will discuss them at a summary level, and I will try to capture as much as what Prabhupada has given with my limited ability of absorption. We'll start with verse number 23. I will read the first one in Sanskrit, the rest of them we will just do the English portions. Yadasya nabhyam nalinat aham asam mahatmanaha navidam yajna sambharan purusha vaya van rute. The translation: when I was born from the abdominal lotus flower of the Lord Mahavishnu, the great person, I had no ingredients for sacrificial performances except the bodily limbs of the great personality of Godhead. So this section is basically all part of the chapter called Purusha Shukta Confirmed. That is the sixth chapter. So here there is a discussion between Narada Muni and Lord Brahma. So Narada Muni is actually glorifying Lord Brahma and saying, you are the greatest personality, and you are the greatest creator and all that kind of a glorification. And Lord Brahma actually tells him that I am simply the secondary creator, and he goes on to explain about the personality of Godhead, and that is the most important thing. Srimad Bhagavatam gives things clearly without any distortion, without any covering, or without or rather removing all the maze around certain amazing things, right? We sometimes get lost in seeing all the Prabhupada talks very nicely on all these aspects. Basically, he's trying to, if you see this section, the impression I got very clearly was Prabhupada was trying to distinguish between the personal feature of the Lord, that means the personalism, versus the impersonal aspect of the Lord. So he is actually in every verse, he's actually going into the depth of it and trying to make us understand that the personal feature of the Lord, the Vaishnava way of thinking, understanding the Lord, Vaishnava way of understanding the Jiva, that is very important. And he's going into every verse and trying to contrast these two. Uh, in many of these verses, he's talking in depth about that. So, the point is, while generally people believe, okay, Lord Brahma is the creator and all that, here it cuts through Brahma himself talking about actually the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, and that he is actually only a minuscule portion of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we will see this a little in detail in this verse, where he is saying that when Lord Brahma is actually also, Prabhupada writes, as Swayambhu. Swayambhu means someone who does not have a father and mother. Generally, all created beings are born out of combination of a male and a female, whatever be the species, and they are always having a father and mother. But in this case, Lord Brahma actually came out of the came from the lotus, which is there in the navel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mahavishnu, that is being mentioned here, and he, in that sense, that lotus which is formed from the navel is also considered a limb of the Personality of Godhead, and from that limb, Lord Brahma came out, was there. And he is also considered a part and parcel of that great personality of Mahavishnu. Here the discussion, Prabhupada talks about the situation of Lord Brahma when he was originally created, and he sees, it's completely darkness all around. And he's like perplexed, I don't know what to do, how to do. He goes down the stem of the lotus. We all know that the stem of the lotus are considered to be the 14 planetary systems. So he goes down all of those, down up to the, the ocean or the water in which the lotus is standing. And then he is little bewildered and he's little frightened. Therefore, he comes back onto the top of the lotus. And then the Lord, from his heart, he tells him to, he uses the Lord chants the word tapa. That means he says, you perform tapa, austerities, and then for you to understand what the whole thing is all about. So then he meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then he actually understands the whole aspect of the purpose of his creation and what is his purpose of his life, and he understands that, and then he starts the subsequent creation of the further secondary creation he starts. And here it is when it's also talking about, he says, right, I had no ingredients for sacrificial performances except the bodily limbs of the great personality of Godhead. So that aspect also Prabhupada is touching upon, where he's saying the impersonalists generally do not worship the Lord. They are more enamored by the energy of the Lord and the various ingredients that has been created by the Lord. So there is actually, in effect, there is nothing beyond the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All of them know that. Therefore, all of these things, ingredients which we see in the nature, which are so beautiful, the big mountains, the so many things which are there, all of them are actually the bodily aspects of the Personality of Godhead. And generally, these impersonalists are more enamored by those things rather than the creator of all of those things, or the original person whose part and parcel are these big creations. So that is something which is important. And he also says, the aspect of from the earth, the fruits and flowers and all of them come, but we clearly understand and worship the earth, not the fruits and flowers. That means the fruits and flowers and all these plants are part of this earth. They are coming from the earth, but we do not worship these the fruits and the flowers, but we worship the earth. But at the same time, whatever is coming from the earth is offered to the earth. It is not like, I am having something special to give to Mother Earth and say, no, I'm offering this to you, because we are only offering what is coming from the earth. Like this, he is giving one more example of the Ganges. We take the water of the Ganges and offer it to the Ganges, nothing of ours. It is the waters, but we offer it to us. But we get the benefit that we get by offering something to Ganges. Just like we offer from the earth, we take and worship earth herself, Mother Earth herself, like this. So similarly, whatever we are, everything that is coming out of the entire cosmic manifestation, everything belongs to the Lord. And we take them and offer the yajna. Whatever is coming as a part and parcel of the Lord, that we take and offer the yajna. And when we do that offering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we actually get devotional, the blessings for devotional worship, devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that has been mentioned in this verse. We will go to the next one. For performing sacrificial ceremonies, one requires sacrificial ingredients such as flowers, leaves, and straw, along with the sacrificial altar and a suitable time. And within brackets, spring has been mentioned. There is no specific purport to this. It's just a statement of fact that, for performing sacrifice, we do need a lot of ingredients. Other requirements are utensils, grains, clarified butter, honey, gold, earth, water, the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, and Sama Veda, and 4 priests to perform the sacrifices. So this is the extension of the previous verse, or what all are required to perform yajna or sacrifice. And Prabhupada actually talks about the 4 priests that are required for performing any yajna. So when you have to perform any yajna, we should remember there has to be 4 priests, not simply 1 priest or 2 priests. And the specific role of each priest has been given, that one priest one who can offer hota, that means whatever is the ingredients that is given into the sacrificial fire. So he has to be the person who will have to do that activity, and one who has to chant the mantras. So this is the second priest's job, and one who should actually be able to bring out fire without use of any just like we use a matchstick or anything like that. This person, his ability to create fire without any of these matchsticks or any other thing which directly has fire. That is his third job. And the fourth person is the supervisor or the Brahma. So these are the 4 people that are required. And Prabhupada is actually saying, it's actually very difficult to get a real Brahmana, a priest like this, these 4 kinds of people in Kali Yuga. Therefore, and these have been conducted from the birth of Brahma to the time when Yudhishthira Maharaj was there. These were performed like that, these yajnas. But subsequently, Prabhupada makes a point that, there is no one who's really qualified. There are very rarely such great Brahmanas who can, create fire with nothing, right? Or chant the mantras perfectly, or offer it in a very perfect way into the thing, or the supervise all these 3. That person should be even above all of these 4, so that he is supervising these 3 other people. So such things are not practically possible in this age of corruption and quarrel. And therefore, he is saying the best yajna that is prescribed for this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, or basically in Kali, is actually the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. And that is, that Prabhupada is quoting the Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama eva kevalam, kalau nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatiranyata. So that is the point that is being discussed here. The next verse. Other necessities include invoking the different names of the demigods by specific hymns and vows of recompense in accordance with the particular scripture for specific purpose and by specific processes. This is the next verse where Brahma is reciting that other necessities of performing yajna is the chant, invoke the names of the demigods by specific hymns and vows, according to the prescription given in the various scriptures for the specific purpose for which this yajna is concerned. So if you see this definition, this is very clearly that, this kind of yajna is being talked about what is basically under the fruitive activities section. That means you perform a specific yajna to achieve a specific benefit, and then you invoke the name of a specific demigod. So Prabhupada is again coming to this point of like, this was performed by Brahmas, in the beginning of the creation, and then these were it's a great science, he's saying. Nonetheless, it's a great science, and due to being out of proper use for more than 4,000 years for want of qualified brahmanas. Again, coming back to this point of there is no qualified brahmana. It was done up to the point of Maharaj Yudhishthira, starting from Lord Brahma to the time of Maharaja Yudhishthira. But subsequently, there is, while this is a great science, but how to perform this is actually that know-how and the qualification of performing that is not there in this age of Kali. And therefore, there's no point in trying to do all of these things. And he's also saying it has come in a different form today. Like, for example, I also quote these things generally, like, see, those days you were going to the demigods and seeking their blessings, and then you are getting some benefit. Today, that same thing, instead of doing this yajna, the materialists are actually trying to using the so-called science to achieve these benefits. Like, you are finding out so many medicines, and you take the benefit of these medicines. So ultimately, this yajna are to actually get some benefit, right? I don't have children, therefore I will perform this yajna, then I should get a child. But today you are researched so much into this production philosophy that people are able to, the scientists are able to help with, people who can't have children. Then, with so much of scientific development, they are saying, okay, we will help you get children. Like this, there are so many things that are happening. But still, they have not come to this point of chanting the more subtle aspect of chanting specific vibrations, which can actually create that effect. These are scientific things are more gross in one sense, but there are also slightly subtle things, like just how you can hear the words of someone speaking in, say, 10,000 miles away or wherever, like, in the other side of the globe. Like it could be in the Americas or the Europe or Africa or either the North Pole or South Pole. You may be so far away, but you are able to hear the voice that has been used there crystal clear. So there is science, all these developments are happening we are, seeing the manifestation of all of these things in a more grosser form by these scientific developments. But then that is very nascent stage. But there, the ones mentioned here are something by chanting these mantras. So many things can be achieved by simply chanting the mantras. That means vibration of the sound, which we are in a nascent stage from a material perspective. But the point here is, therefore, this is not a debate about, therefore, should we get more deeper into the science and forget all these things. That is not the discussion point. The point is, nonetheless, all of these things are actually still connected with only fruitive activities. That means getting some benefit, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, which puts us in a kind of a cycle of birth and death, without allowing us to come to this point of understanding. But all this is fine, but I still don't get why am I here, right? That we are not able to understand, but we are chasing these benefits, getting it and all that. So superficially, these things seem to be that, oh, this is great, that is great. But beyond a point, they do not lead you to the ultimate purpose of life. And therefore, the Lord is saying the ultimate purpose of life is to understand the, Prabhupada is writing, the ultimate purpose is actually to understand the purpose of this life. Why am I here? And for that, to clean the heart, to see the clear picture, the chanting of the holy name is the most important thing. And therefore, coming back to the yajna of the Yuga Dharma for the Kali Yuga, which is chanting of the holy name of the Lord, the Harinama Sankirtan. That is more important than the process which here Lord Brahma is describing about the yajnas and the chanting of the invoking the demigods, and then doing the particular process prescribed in a particular scripture for getting the particular result. Right now, in the Kali Yuga, the particular purpose is to actually do self-realization, and for that, the process is chanting the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That has been discussed here. Then the next verse. The next verse is, thus I had to arrange all these necessary ingredients and paraphernalia of sacrifice from the personal bodily parts of the personality of Godhead. By invocation of the demigods' names, the ultimate goal, Vishnu, was gradually attained, and thus compensation and ultimate offerings were complete. So here, the process of invoking the demigods, following a particular scripture's recommendation, and obtaining the benefits, here Lord Brahma himself is clarifying, are actually only a means to an end. So the end is not that, like, no, I get these benefits, I invoke the name of the demigod, then there is some benefit which comes, and then, I experience that. So that is only a means which gradually, the Vedas are, Prabhupada mentions elsewhere, 90% of the Vedas are related to the Karma Kanda sections. That means about the cause and the fruitive activities. That means I perform this under regulation, and as a result of that austerity of performing a particular yajna with regulation, I get these benefits. And therefore, I am allowed to experience some material hankering which I am having in a regulated manner. But in the course of time, my consciousness is slowly refined. Just like, when we start to speak as a child, we do not say the words properly, but we keep trying, right? We keep saying in different ways, and slowly the refinement of words come. Similarly, walking, similarly, so many things like that. When we study, we may not be very expert, but slowly by practicing, slowly we become refined. We get to higher and subtle knowledge. Like this, these processes are like this rudimentary from a spiritual perspective to come to that highest point of understanding self, understanding the Lord, understanding the relationship between the personality of Godhead and us, and further what is our role post understanding our these few things. But therefore, these are elementary things which we are supposed to do. But the objective is the Mahavishnu, that is mentioned here. And therefore, here again, Prabhupada is talking about, therefore, the personality of Mahavishnu is given more importance than the impersonal feature of the Lord. The ultimate purpose of all these yajnas is to please that Mahavishnu, not the impersonal feature of the Lord, just like this, so many people worship so many other stuff. But the yajna is not meant to, why they may invoke the demigod's name and all that, but the purpose is to satisfy that Mahavishnu. That is the point that is being mentioned here. Then the next verse, 28. Thus I created the ingredients and paraphernalia for offering sacrifice out of the parts of the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I performed the sacrifice to satisfy the Lord. So these are continuation of it, where he progressively talks about it. There was no ingredients, I had to use the ingredients. So how is the ingredients different from the Lord? We discussed that. And then, how to perform those kind of yajnas we performed. And we understood what is the purpose of those yajnas. And then his purpose of yajnas in different levels. That means one is to get the benefit and gradually progress. And then the ultimate aim is being mentioned. And here in this verse, it is talking about the and I perform the sacrifice to satisfy the Lord. Ultimately, that sacrifice is to satisfy that personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada is quoting this verse in from Bhagavad Gita 5.29, Bhoktaram eki tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram sugrudam sarva bhutanam nyatva mam shantim muchati. That means the ultimate purpose is to understand that the Lord is the ultimate beneficiary of all the yajnas, and he is the well-wisher of every living entity. Sugrudam sarva bhutanam. Sarva bhuta is all living entities, not just the human beings or higher beings, but all living entities. And he is the well-wisher, Sugrutam, a well-wisher and one who does good to all these bhutana. And once who knows this is actually Nyatva Mam Shanti Murti, understands me in that as that way, he says he actually attains peace. Nyatva Mam Shantim Ruchati obtains. And then here, the point about what a sacrifice has been discussed. See, the minute when we say sacrifice and yajna are always used together, right? Yajna is the Sanskrit word and generally translated as sacrifices, right? He performed this sacrifice, that sacrifice. And Prabhupada very simply brings out the very beautiful, right? He says, what is the meaning of sacrifice? Sacrifice means, when in English, when you say the word sacrifice, the word is I take give up something to satisfy someone else, right? I sacrificed my life for my children. When someone says this, what is the meaning? I took a lot of austerity for the benefit of my children, right? Then people, now you get it, right? The word sacrifice is that, I give up something or I restrain myself from something to please someone else. That is called sacrifice. And that is actually the purpose. The ultimate of that is actually I take a lot of austerities to actually please that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. So this is very simple, right? So many times we get confused. But it's simple. Sacrifice means I take austerities and I put myself in a lower position just to make someone else's happy. So our idea is actually to perform these sacrifices, means to do whatever we need to do to please that personality of Godhead. So that's the purpose of this verse. Prabhupada writes, the whole world is engaged in sacrificing energy for advancement of learning, social upliftment, economic development, and plans for total improvement of the human condition. Total improvement of the human conditions, but no one is interested in sacrificing for the sake of the Lord, as it is advised in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, there is no peace in this world. He's saying why we are not having peace in this world, because the sacrifices are meant to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in the process you get peace. But today all the sacrifices are for attaining material benefits, like people work 24 hours a day. So they are sacrificing so many things they don't realize, but that is for, like, you work so hard to get some money and that is being used by someone else, right? We are not able to use it. We only eat very little. We don't even get time to eat our lunch properly. We are working 24/7. So what is the sacrifice for? We make millions of rupees that is being enjoyed by so many other people. So this concept of sacrifice for what purpose or to whom, that is important. When it is done for the ultimate person, Vishnu, then there is peace. But if it is done for lower levels of consciousness, then there is no real peace. So that's been highlighted by Srila Prabhupada in this verse. So these are very powerful. I'm rushing through because I have to cover a lot of verses. But if you really go into the depth of these verses, they are really amazing, right? If you really think about it, what am I running for? What am I sacrificing for? And if it is going to achieve 24 hours working without sleep, without water, without drink, and then I'm losing my vital energy, my life itself by this process. But at the end of it, that sacrifice is achieving what? It is only giving some simple material benefits to little bit to me and to the rest to the lot of other people around me. But they are also not going to permanently enjoy it. Therefore, I'm just taking one example. Now you can extend it to everything, to the kind of social work we do, or the kind of research, to mankind. So many people can go into different trips, like, musicians, like, they perfect the art of music. They spend hours and years together. The sports people, like, that day I was seeing Sania Mirza speak. She's retired. She's a tennis player and she's retired. And then she says, I spent 25 years of sacrifice to achieve. But then she came to such fame. But at the end of it, what she says, like, now I want to really sleep. I never got to sleep in my life. I'm sleepy. I want to sleep now. If you can't even sleep, then what is the great achievement that we are doing? So these kind of things that we are doing, of course, I'm not belittling her, whatever in her perception that she's achieved, wonderful, from a material perspective. But ultimately, from a Atma, from the soul perspective, what have we achieved? That is very important. So this is something which is we need to ponder about. Then we'll go to the next one. My dear son, therefore, your 9 brothers who are the masters of living creatures performed the sacrifice with proper rituals to satisfy both the manifested and non-manifested personalities. And he's saying, I performed this, and many of the others also performed, like, your other brothers performed all these things. And then he's using these 2 words, right? The manifested and the non-manifested personalities. So what is the meaning of this manifested and non-manifested personalities? So there Prabhupada is trying to highlight the manifested personalities are the extensions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in terms of the various demigods, right? They are all manifested personalities. The Lord himself is also manifest, but to our eyes, they are not manifest. That is the thing. That means our consciousness has not evolved to the extent to be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can talk about the demigods, why we are attracted to the demigods, because we are able to see the manifested demigods, but we are not able to Supreme Lord in our mind, and we give him as someone from something from which all these things come. Like, that is we consider as an abstract, but from that abstract, some clear manifested things come, then we call, okay, this Indra, Chandra, like that. And sometimes many people even consider from that comes Rama, Krishna, Narasimha, like that. So they are not able to really understand the real thing which is considered the unmanifest in this situation. But in reality, the Lord is actually fully manifest. And of course, he has an unmanifested feature of him. Yeah, that's only a small portion of his various capabilities. But people blow it up to focus more on the unmanifested portion. So here, when he's talking about this, we need to understand that unmanifested and manifested. The manifested refers to, in this context, the manifested refers to the demigods, including Lord Brahma, and the unmanifested to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not that he is not manifested, but in our mind he is unmanifested, because we can't see him fully. That is the whole problem. So that is being, and he says how we can understand that is only by this word Prabhupada used. Even in these days, God can also be seen by qualified eyes tinged with the ointment of love of Godhead. So that is the need, that is the criteria for one to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or what is considered as the unmanifest. And Prabhupada says even that which is considered manifest in Kali Yuga, that is not possible. Like in the olden days, or rather in the days before Kali Yuga, people were actually able to see the demigods. Like, there are many descriptions where the demigods, when you perform a yajna, the demigods personally appear, I believe. So it's been mentioned many places. And the common man can see them walking, like just like, you see people from Mars are actually coming down here, and we can see their whatever, that spacecraft coming and landing, and then these personalities coming out of that. We can actually physically see them doing that. But says in Kali Yuga, even the demigods are not manifest. So now we are losing everything. We are going to the point where whatever is considered manifest is also becoming unmanifest, and we are coming to this complete illusion, and therefore we are thinking there's nothing called God. Like, for example, if there is a demigod who actually physically comes down, then we will be in our senses that, we are not ultimate, there is something more powerful. And then when they say there is something more than me, we will be able to accept. But today nobody is coming, nobody is telling, and everybody is speculating. Oh, there is what? That's nothing at all. So this is, and we will figure out everything through our advancement in material science. This is what we are thinking. So we are going deeper and deeper into the mode of ignorance. If someone is to come and tell you, boss, just hold on. I am a very powerful personality. I can finish off this earth in with just one thunderbolt. But I am such a small personality compared to some higher beings than me. Then we will become, oh, I completely understand. And we will, but if there's nobody to tell us, because we cannot perceive any of them in reality. So we are going down and down and down into the darkest regions of hell, if I may say so. In Kali Yuga, people are getting into that situation. The next one. Therefore, the Manus, the father of mankind, the great sages, the forefather, the learned scholars, the Daityas and mankind performed sacrifices meant to please the Supreme Lord. He says, I performed this yajna to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then your brothers, everybody did the same thing. And then he's giving a host of other people who also did the same thing. What? The sacrifices to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that means this is the, it's not uncharted territory. This is something which is walked, this path has been walked by many people and all the great personality. It is not like some Tom, Dick and Harry is being mentioned here. The Manus, the father of the mankind, the great sages, the forefathers, the learned scholars, the Daityas and mankind performed sacrifices meant to please. Mankind is talked in the end. So all of these higher beings are actually performing the same thing. That means performing sacrifices to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. So that is being talked about here. The next one. Next one is all the material manifestations of the universes are therefore situated in his powerful material energies, which he accepts self-sufficiently, although he is eternally without affinity for the material modes. Next verse number 31. Here the point is about all the material manifestations of the universes are therefore situated in his powerful material energies, which he accepts self-sufficiently, although he is eternally without affinity for the material modes. Here, the point that is mentioned is, again, that everything and anything from this world is actually part and parcel of the Lord, or the source of all of that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he is not touched by anything material. That all of this material comes from him, but he is not in any way connected to the material. That's the point, right? Now we always talk about when you are in this material mode, then you are material world, you are automatically connected to the three modes of material nature, like Sattva, Rajo, and Tamo. But the point made here is all of this material actually come from him, but don't take it that therefore he's within this material sphere of things. He's outside of that and he's not at all affected by these three modes of material nature. And he gives a simple example. Very nice, a simple way to understand. He says, like if you are a very big rich man, what you do is you construct a house, let's say. So you do not personally go and construct the house. You get it done, right? You give it to a contractor or someone, he constructs it. But it is your money, it is your resources. With your resources, you construct. Then, supposing you lived in that house for 10 or whatever, 30 years, 40 years, and you want to build another house, and this house is like, no more, what do you call, livable or whatever. You allow it to be destroyed by someone else. You don't do it, right? You don't take a hammer and go on breaking every brick in the house. You have a lot of resources. You say, okay, now you guys go and destroy this house. I want to construct one more house over this. Bring it down and bring a new building, whatever. So that activity is also done by someone else. You delegate it. But when you are living in that house, you are personally involved in every aspect of that house. So like this, the Lord, the creation, the destruction, he doesn't bother, but he's maintaining the house, the house. That means he's actually maintaining all the living entities. He is personally taking care of that aspect of it. That is being discussed in this verse, and Prabhupada writes about it. Next one is, by his will I create, Lord Shiva destroys, and he himself in his eternal form as the personality of Godhead maintains everything. He is the powerful controller of these three energies. So this is nice, right? So he says, we all know that, and mainly these materialistic people or the impersonalists try to put that power as a combination of these three major powers. That all are one, all of these powers are one, but it is subdivided into three categories for the purpose of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. But the source of all of these three are actually something else, which is actually impersonal. This is their way of understanding. But here it is mentioned, no, the Lord is the maintainer. The role he has taken as a maintainer as Vishnu, we all know that. And that example which we gave in the previous one is to be understood. He is the owner of all the resources, and a portion of that resources is the creator Brahma, and a portion of that resource is the uh, destroyer Lord Vishnu, and he anyway personally maintains the whole thing, but everything is actually under his resource capability. Not that that is something else, this is something else, and his job is only maintenance. No, everything belongs to him. He is delegating it to Lord Brahma to create. He is delegating it to Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva to destroy, and he is personally taking care of the maintenance. Not that he himself is a feature of someone else. No, the other two are actually his features, and he's all encompassing. In addition to these three, also he is the because in the spiritual world, right? This creation, destruction, maintenance is for the material world. What about the spiritual world? The spiritual world is 3/4 of this material world. I mean, this if material world is 1/4, that is 3/4. Therefore, and he is actually the ultimate authority there also. So that means even beyond this creation, maintenance, and destruction, he is the most resourceful person, and he has all the resources, and everything belongs to him. That is the point that is being discussed. Then right now. So he talked about these three aspects which are there, like the truth in the Lord Vasudeva is one without therefore the Lord Vasudeva is one without a second, but because he is all powerful, he can expand himself as well as display his omnipotencies. That is the point. The Lord is described here as omnipotent by three energies, three Shakti Dhrika. So primarily his three energies are internal, marginal, and external. The external energy is also displayed in the three modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Like the further subdivision of that internal, marginal, internal, and external. Internal is those which relate to the spiritual world. The external is the material world, and the marginal is the living entities which can actually either be there or here. So these three different energies. And when you talk about the external, that means the material world, then there is again three modes which actually govern them. That means the what do you call the sattva, rajo, and guna, sattva, tamo, and rajo gunas. And then he says the internal also is divided into three categories, which are Samvit, Sandini, and Haladini. So there are these three different categories. Within these three, there are three in each. Like that, he's explaining that. But for all of that, the source or the resource person is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. My dear son, whatever you inquired from me, I have thus explained unto you, and you must know for certain that whatever there is, either as a cause or as an effect, both in the material and spiritual world, is dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So ultimately, everything either as a cause or as an effect. For someone, it could be a cause, for someone, it could be an effect. But ultimately, it keeps on going like this. But where does the buck stops? The buck stops with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's nothing beyond him. It is mentioned here, Prabhupada is quoting this verse. Ishwaraha Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. And then he's quoting from Bhagavad Gita 10.8. Aham sarvasya prabho matta sarva pravartate iti matva bhajate mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Buddha bhava samanvitaha. So the original primeval cause is vigraha, the personal, right? Satchidananda vigraha. That means the personality. Vigraha means form. It's not formless. Vigraha, the person, so the original primeval cause is Vigraha. The personal and the impersonal spiritual effulgence Brahma Jyoti is also an effect of the Supreme Brahman. This is important. That's what is mentioned in this verse. The next one is, O Narada, here in 34, O Narada, because I have caught hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari with great zeal, whatever I say has never proved to have been false, nor has the progress of my mind ever deterred, nor are my senses ever degraded by temporary attachment to matter. So very beautiful, right? He's saying, see, this is a section which talks about how do we understand the Supreme Personality of God, right? So we saw already. There is like, the Lord is so, it's so complex. We actually get lost into the superficial things that we do not see the depth of it. Because how can he be the person and then everything comes out of him and he's also inside that, and he comes down and he's there, he's playing, and how can it be? If you are something bigger, then you cannot come inside that which you created, kind of a thing. Some people are not able to simultaneously, you are existing here, but you are also outside of it. How is it possible? So people get lost into all of these things, and therefore we are not able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Narada is actually trying to explain that in a way in relation to him, how he is able to understand him. He says, I caught hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari with great zeal. Whatever I say has never proved to have been false. That means the Lord is absolute truth. We are very minute and insignificant portions. But when we catch hold of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when we are fully connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are also empowered to actually be very powerful. That means whatever he says has actually come true. Means how is it possible? You are such a small jiva. What capacity you have to make everything come true? Right? We say so many things, nothing can happen. But when you are connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then whatever you say can become true. So this is something which is very important. And in this context, I wanted to bring the point of Srila Prabhupada's position. See, sometimes people think, oh, Prabhupada also made mistakes. Prabhupada, sometimes whatever he said is not all true. Sometimes he may have given some things which he not actually, maybe from that point, that time perspective, that may be true, but that is not true today. There are many various versions today, and people sometimes believe we may have to improvise on what Prabhupada said, right? Beyond a point that is not called for. That is the point that is being mentioned. Because when Prabhupada was, as Prabhupada was completely attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will make everything that Prabhupada said to come true. That means nothing of what Prabhupada said will not manifest. It's not that nothing will ever not manifest. It will always manifest. So we simply have to accept the words of the today. In some context it may look like no, this may not be true, today science is saying something different, no, which is all fine. These are only distractions. We have to accept the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pure devotees. And even something looks like it may not be manifesting, but because this pure devotee has said it, it will manifest, right? The Lord will make it happen. There are many such things like this. When a pure devotee by mistake said, today is Amavasya, when actually it is a full moon day. But then because he has said it, the Lord made that day an Amavasya. Like, he covered the moon, and it became Amavasya like that. There are many such instances. The point is, we as living jivas may have some deficiency, but when we are actually connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that means a pure devotee who is completely dependent on the Lord, then he is actually highly empowered by the absolute truth, which has no fault at all, right? And therefore, that feature of that no fault actually comes on to this other personality who is actually connected to the Lord in that manner. So these are very subtle things which we need to understand and see how we can understand the Lord in that sense. And Krishna says, right, Prabhupada is saying, he is using this word, Kaunteya Pratijanati, Name Bhakta Pranashyati. Why does he say this? Why can't Krishna say, my devotee will not perish? But he's saying, oh Arjuna, you declare that my devotee will not perish. Why is he saying that? People sometimes, when Krishna says, people don't want to believe. But he says, his pure devotees are so powerful that when they say, it has to be believed. And who's going to make it happen? Arjuna cannot make that happen, right? It is only Krishna. But he's saying, you declare boldly, and I will make it happen for you. So this is the context. A devotee of the Lord, whatever he says will be manifested by the Lord. But people may not believe in the words of the Lord, but a true devotee believes, and he puts his stake on the words of the Lord. Arjuna, you say that, but how can I say, how can that your devotees will not perish? Do I have the ability to protect all of them? No. But you say it, you trust me, you say it, and I will make it happen. This is the Lord's words. And if we are able to develop that faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just like a child when he's thrown up, right? Sometimes people play with these children, like, they just put the child up and catch the child. The child is simply laughing, right? If someone throws me up like that, then I will only shout, oh, I will shout. But the child is now actually fully comfortable under the protection of that person who is throwing that child up. And therefore, he is in peaceful state. Like this, if we are able to actually be completely dependent on the Lord, then whatever happens, we will be peaceful. We will not worry, oh, why it is. Because I am under the safe hands of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And whatever happens is something which is destined by the Lord to me, and therefore I am in perfect hands, and I am accepting whatever he gives me. This mood is something which is the mood which great personalities, great pure devotees of the Lord always exhibited. Our Srila Prabhupada himself, I talked about it, but there are many other pure devotees of the Lord, many in various sampradayas also, who had this unflinching faith on the Lord and his words. They have actually demonstrated this. The next verse. Although I am known as the great Brahma, perfect in the disciplic succession of Vedic wisdom, and although I have undergone all austerities and am an expert in mystic power and self-realization, and although I am recognized as such by great forefathers of the living entities who offer me respectful obeisances, still I cannot understand him, the Lord, the very source of my birth. See, now here Brahma is putting forth his qualification. So if I think, I'm a great scientist, I am this, that, I am the head of this university, I am this, that, whatever. Like this, here he is saying, no, I am the, I have undergone all austerities and I am expert in mystic powers and self-realization. With all of these abilities, Lord Brahma is actually not able to understand that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, now the question comes, then what is the qualification for knowing the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Is it that you are a great exponent in the Vedic scriptures? Does it give you the right to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So he says, so these qualifications are not sufficient to know the Supreme Lord. Lord Brahma could understand the Lord to a little extent only when he was trying to serve him by the eagerness of his heart. Hridaya Daurbalyam. Hridaya Kantyavata, which is the devotional service mood. Therefore, the Lord can be known only by the sincere mood of eagerness for service and not by any amount of material qualification as a scientist or speculative philosopher or by attaining of mystic powers. This has been discussed in this verse. That means all your great qualification, which are more material or whatever subtle it may be, but with that we cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the next one is, therefore it is best for me to surrender onto his feet, which alone can deliver one from the miseries of repeated birth and death. Such surrender is all auspicious and allows one to perceive all happiness. Even the sky cannot estimate the limits of his own expansion. So what can others do when the Lord himself is unable to estimate his own limits? So here this verse talks about the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead versus the Mayavadi's version that the Jiva itself is God at some point in time. Their belief is the Jiva, when it is covered by some impurities, actually becomes a living entity. But when the impurities are removed, then they become merged with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or in other words, they become God. This is their concept. But Prabhupada actually written very elaborately to bring out these differences between the Jiva and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here it is mentioned, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally not covered by illusion. That word is being used in this verse. Which means it is not that Supreme Personality got contaminated by any means. That is what their definition of Jiva is, the Mayavadi's definition of Jiva. But here it is proved that the Lord is never contaminated. Then how come that the Lord became contaminated and became a Jiva? These are very contradicting things. Therefore, the Supreme Lord can never be contaminated, while the Jiva is contaminated and then he can be purified and he can go back to the spiritual world. Therefore, these two are two different entities. One's perpetual quality is never get contaminated. The other's perpetual quality is it can get contaminated and can be cleansed of that contamination. These two are very important things that we need to understand, the distinction between a Jiva and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, the living entity cannot assume that he is actually equal to God or will become God, but mood should be that, I am fully cognizant of that Supreme Personality, even though I may have his quality in minuscule quantity, and I need to actually surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the realization one needs to have as per this verse. Then, since neither Lord Shiva nor you nor I could ascertain the limits of spiritual happiness, how can other demigods know it? And because all of us are bewildered by the illusory external energy of the Supreme Lord, we can see only this manifested cosmos according to our individual ability. This is the other important thing. That means, while everybody is trying to hanker to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even the great personalities are having very limited abilities. When he's talking about, Lord Shiva, you, me, these three are the top of the 14 Mahajanas, top three of the 14 Mahajanas. Like this, if these people, the top Mahajanas themselves cannot understand the Lord in full, then how can any ordinary living entity understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So that is being discussed in elaborately here. At a summary level, the point is, there are many higher beings above us, and each one of them have only understood a little portion of it. And how can we understand as human beings about the personality of Godhead? The process is to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then you transcend all these different beings and become a direct, pure devotee of the Lord. And that's very simple. It's not about I am a human, someone else is a Devata, and therefore their ability is high. You are a Jiva. That is more important. That Deva is also a Jiva. But materially, we see all these powers. But if you surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we come to the platform of soul, and then it's very easy to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But of course, you cannot fully understand him. You can understand him uh, in some portions. But as humans, people are trying to understand Lord according to what he is able to surrender. Therefore, some people are able to see him only to the extent of getting some material benefits. Some are able to see him to the extent of getting some mystic powers, and some are able to see him to the extent of merging with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The three levels, right? Some people are thinking in an impersonal state, some people are in the karma kanda state, some people are in the yoga state. So the materialistics are in terms of getting the needs fulfilled. They are able to see Lord to that extent. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, right? To the extent you surrender to me, I will also reciprocate. So if your extent of surrender is simply to seek some material benefit, you get it. That is the materialist. The second level is the people who are actually looking for some mystic powers. Therefore, they are in the yogis in one sense. So those people, they are able to see the Lord to the extent of these mystic powers. They are able to obtain the mystic powers from the Lord. And for them, that much only is the Lord. That someone is a mystic, someone who can give mystic powers and who himself is a kind of a mystic. And the third one is someone who thinks both are actually waste. Okay, these mystic powers will be there for some time and go away, and anyway I'm going to die. Then the materialistic things, even lesser, what is the point of having all it? I want to simply merge into the existence of the Lord. I want to become the Lord myself. So those people actually go and get merged into the Brahma Jyoti feature of the Lord, which is only a small portion of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these are all there according to your level of desire. Then you can actually understand the Lord. But nobody can understand the Lord perfectly. The higher realized personalities like the Mahajanas can understand much more, but still they also cannot understand the full potency of the Lordships. Forget about all of these people. The Lord himself cannot understand himself fully, I believe. This is something which is mind-boggling. Then how can you be God? If you do not know about you are not supposed to know everything, right? You are God, you are supposed to know everything. And if you can't know yourself fully, then how can you be God? That's a natural question to ask. So Prabhupada explains, no, it's not like that. The fact is, there is so much to know, and Krishna then knows everything, and then that further he expands, and then he doesn't know. Then he further understands that, and then it further expands. So this is ever this capacity or the potencies of the Lord keep on expanding, but he knows after he knows fully, and then he expands further. Then he needs to know further because it's a further expanded. So that way, that means imagine his capabilities. He himself cannot know fully because there is no end to his potencies. It keeps on growing. So that's why Adi says, I want millions of tongues to talk about the glories of the Lord. But it will never get exhausted, because by the time you talk about all the Leelas, there is one more Leela which has happened. You have to talk about it. And the Lord also keeps expanding his potencies like this, and he himself is sort of a little surprised at his capabilities. That is talked about there. Then he says, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose incarnation and activities are chanted by us for glorification, though he can hardly be fully known as he is. So the idea of trying to know the Lord is by actually trying to understand his pastimes. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvataha tektva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. So we need to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We need to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in the process, we will be able to understand him better. The Supreme Original Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, expanding his plenary portion as Mahavishnu, the first incarnation, creates this manifested cosmos, but he is unborn. The creation, however, takes place in him, and the material substances and manifestations are all himself. He maintains them for some time and absorbs them into himself again. This talks about the entire creation process. Why the creation happens? Because we are desiring to be independent of him, want to think that I am the Supreme Lord, I am the enjoyer. So he creates out of costless mercy. Okay, this jiva wants to enjoy, I will create it for him. And then therefore he creates this this material world, including all the ingredients that are required. He's creating it for us. Then the next one is the personality of Godhead is pure, being free from all contamination of material tinges. He is the absolute truth and the embodiment of full and perfect knowledge. He is all pervading, without beginning or end, and without rival. O Narada, O great sage, the great thinkers can know him when completely freed from all material hankerings and when sheltered under undisturbed conditions of the senses. Otherwise, by untenable arguments, the Lord is distorted and the Lord disappears from our sight. So this is the ultimate truth of how one can know. One should be completely free of material desires. And he should be situated without any speculation. So we can argue, we can fight, we can say, oh, this is how it is, that is all. This is all absolute waste of time. If you are able to take the words of those who have perfected their life without any deviation, accepting as it is, and simply surrender to that process, then we can actually clearly see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But no other process works. We have seen this example of Lord Brahma being an exponent in everything, but he says, I cannot understand with all these abilities. I have to understand only by catching hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is being discussed here. Then comes the next one. Karanodaka Sai Vishnu is the first incarnation of the Supreme Lord and is the master of eternal time, space, cause and effects, mind, the elements, the material ego, the modes of nature, the senses, the universal form of the Lord, Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu, and the sum total of all living beings, born, moving, and non-moving, both moving and non-moving. So the Karanodaka Sai Vishnu, the Mahavishnu, is the first person from whom all these planetary things came out. And everything subsequently in this material world is actually this under his production. Everything, including his further manifestation as the Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu. That means from Mahavishnu, all these planetary systems came through his breathing, and then all these planetary systems were created, and from him came the Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu, who entered as the moving force into all of these material creations. And he also came down as the Paramatma into the hearts of the living entities. So that is being discussed here. How he is the source of everything. I myself, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, great generators of living beings like Daksha and Prajapati, yourself, Narada and the Kumaras, heavenly demigods like Indra and Chandra, the leaders of the Bhuloka planets, the leaders of the earthly planets, the leaders of the lower planets, the leaders of the Gandharva planets, the leaders of the Vidura planets, the leaders of the Chandraloka planets, the leaders of the Yakshas, Rakshas and Uragas, the great sages, the great demons, the great atheists and the great spacemen, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirit, Saturns, jinn, Kusumandas, great aquatics, great beasts and great birds, etc. In other words, anything and everything which is exceptionally possessed of power, opulence, mental and perpetual dexterity, strength, forgiveness, beauty, modesty, opulence and breeding, whether in form or formless, may appear to be the specific truth and the form of the Lord, but actually they are not so. They are only a fragment of the transcendental potency of the Lord. Here, the simple thing is, these are all looking so great, and we sometimes think that they are actually God. Like Krishna says, right? I am the strength of the strength. I am the taste of water. I am Kartikeya among the generals. All of this to say that therefore we should not get misled to think that these are actually God. How we should understand this is, these are various forms, and it could be some subtle powers like that, but they are only parts or the energy of that Supreme Lord. But that Supreme Lord actually has a separate form and a place and a guna and likes, dislikes, everything. But we may get enamored by seeing all these things. If you see the thunderbolt, for example, the Aborigines, they worship and fear the thunderbolt. But a devotee is not, he understands this thunderbolt is the biggest power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he never thinks that this thunder is actually the Lord. So as you are becoming higher and higher, here Prabhupada talks about some people look like these thunderbolts. As they progress their consciousness, they are able to look at the demigods as something more powerful. They say them as the gods. But if you go further down, it says those people come to this platform of worship of Ganapati, like, higher than the demigods. And further down, you are able to see that in relation to the soul, and you are able to worship Lord Shiva. So this is a progressive ways of seeing the Lord. We talked about this progressive ways of seeing Lord. It is not that the Lord is actually any of these, but we are able to see Lord only to this extent because of our limited vision, because of our limited understanding and ignorance. And how can that ignorance be removed? By simply surrendering process. And surrendering cannot be that, therefore I artificially surrender to something. You have to surrender to the Lord, means the Lord and his representatives. And when the Lord and their representative, whatever they say, if you are able to accept it completely, then that surrendering process is full. And therefore, immediately we can see the truth. So it is very logical, very scientific, but somehow because of our complicated consciousness, which is very actually in ignorant state, we are not able to understand it in perfection. It's simple. That's the supreme beautiful personality of God. That day I was seeing on Maharaj speak. The Lord Krishna's body is so soft, it's like, it's like a girl, it's mentioned. But from that body, everything is emanating. How can you understand this? He's so soft, he's so fragile, so intricate, but he's like thunderbolt. How is it possible? So this is always eluding our brain. We think, oh my God, this is all. No, actually, this is all the manifestation of some abstract thing, that impersonal thing. People get into all these things, but we simply have to understand the words of the Acharya. Prabhupada, I would recommend all of you to read through all of this. I have not done justice to this in this 1 hour, or more than 1 hour I have taken. But you should read through this. Prabhupada is taking so much pain to clearly distinguish between this impersonal feature and the personal feature of the Lord. Therefore, I am focusing on the personal feature. I am trying to be as, in this whatever little time I can speak. But that is what this Vaishnavism is all about, understanding the personal feature of the Lord. And we also understand this is not some, anyway, I also can get it. No, it is not so easy. But the process is given, and if you are able to follow it, we can get to that point. The last verse in this is, O Narada, now I shall state one after another the transcendental incarnations of the Lord known as Leela Avataras. Hearing of their activities counteracts all foul matter accumulated in the ear. These pastimes are pleasing to hear and are to be relished. Therefore, they are in my heart. Now he's coming to this point of how can I overcome all my potencies which can actually take me away from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He talked about the surrendering process, catching hold of the Lord. And further from there, how it can be taken forward is actually hearing about the personality of Godhead. That means as we hear something more and more, we get to understand the topic better, right? The simple logic. And therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is mentioned, right? This Vyasadeva, he compiled all the Vedas. He did so many scriptures, but then he's sitting after all of this and saying, I am unhappy. Then Narada Muni had to come and say, why you are unhappy? Because you have understood all these Vedas, you have compiled everything, you have done so many wonderful stuff. But why are you still not happy? Because you have not taken and elaborated on the directly on the personality of Godhead. You have spoken like this. You have talked about the Lord in different, about his various energies, but not the Lord directly like this. So this point has been highlighted here. And therefore, if you have to actually become perfect, then you should know about that personality of Godhead, not about the various energies of the Lord. Yes, we respect them, we are fully cognizant of all that, but we clearly understand they are all the energies of the Lord, but they are not the Lord personally. Personality of God is more important, and therefore, finally, then Vyasadeva, even though he did everything in an abstract way, he came to this point of compiling Srimad Bhagavatam, which is directly addressing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's saying, here Brahma is saying, therefore, I'm going to talk about the direct activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So going forward, he is saying, I'm going to explain all the avatars of the Lord. He will explain one by one, one by one. We will see that in the next chapters. So this is very important, and therefore we, somehow in our Sampradaya, are so blessed to get that crux. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, just study Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. That's all. Nothing else is needed. Bhagavatam is the ultimate compilation by Vyasadeva, and that is now directly given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, prescribed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and taught by our acharyas. And we just imagine like 22 of us here are talking about Bhagavatam sitting here in this Kali Yuga, and we are getting direct access to the personality of God. Mind-boggling how Srila Prabhupada has blessed all of us like this. Whether, at least I don't know, I am not anyway capable of getting this mercy, but the costless mercy of Srila Prabhupada that we are getting it, or I am getting it. And we should really be, we are not able to appreciate it in any way. But if we are even wanting in some small way that I want to appreciate Srimad Bhagavatam, that itself is a big achievement in this life, and we need to make some effort to understand this. And thanks for this wonderful opportunity, and all of you have created this platform very nicely and going through Srimad Bhagavatam in a very systematic manner. Very, very blessed. Thank you all very much. I will stop here. If there are any questions or comments, welcome. I'm sorry I went over time by almost 20 minutes or so, but this topic is so vast. So maybe my inability also to compress it even further, possibly. Hare Krishna. I'll stop here.